She had spent $100 million trying to stay alive. The finest specialists in the world had walked through the glass doors of Hartwell Biotech's headquarters. Private clinics in Switzerland, experimental programs in Japan, elite neurologists from Boston, and celebrated researchers from California had all studied CEO Eleanor Hartwell's mysterious illness. Every one of them left with another invoice, another theory, and another disappointment. Yet the person who finally noticed what everyone else had missed wasn't wearing a white coat. He was pushing a mop bucket down the hallway before sunrise. By 5:30 every morning, the 32nd floor belonged to Marcus Reed. Most executives never saw it. The polished marble reflected only dim security lights, while the city outside slowly woke beneath a blanket of blue dawn. Marcus preferred those quiet hours. They reminded him that no matter how powerful people became, every building still needed someone willing to clean up yesterday before tomorrow could begin. At 42, Marcus carried himself with the calm confidence of a man who had learned not to complain. After losing his wife, Danielle, to ovarian cancer 6 years earlier, life had become a careful balancing act between raising his 12-year-old son, Caleb, and working 2 janitorial shifts. Every dollar mattered. Every hour mattered even more. "Morning, Mr. Reed," the security guard called. Marcus smiled. "Morning, Eddie. Coffee's on the desk if you need it." "You always remember." "My mama said, remembering little things saves big friendships." Eddie laughed while Marcus continued toward the executive wing. The employees rarely knew his name. To most of them, he was simply the janitor. He never minded, because while people ignored him, they also spoke freely around him. Over the years, he'd overheard billion-dollar negotiations, emotional phone calls, quiet celebrations, and heartbreaking failures. He understood something most executives forgot. Money never erased fear. It simply changed what people feared losing. At exactly 7:15, the private elevator opened. Everyone straightened. Eleanor Hartwell arrived. She wasn't carried by assistants or surrounded by drama. She insisted on walking every morning, even if the effort exhausted her. She was only 53, yet every step looked painful. Her left hand trembled almost constantly. Sometimes her vision blurred so badly, she paused before recognizing familiar faces. Some mornings, she needed to lean against the hallway wall for several seconds before continuing. Doctors had labeled her condition with half a dozen different names over the years: rare autoimmune disorder, degenerative neurological disease, genetic syndrome, stress-related inflammation. Treatments came. Hope followed. Then disappointment. Again and again. $100 million had bought every possibility except an answer. Marcus lowered his eyes respectfully as she passed. "Good morning, Miss Hartwell." She stopped. Most executives hurried by maintenance staff without looking twice. She didn't. "Good morning, Marcus, isn't it?" He seemed surprised. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for keeping this place beautiful." She smiled faintly before continuing toward her office. It was a 10-second conversation. But Marcus noticed something. Not the tremor. Not the slow walk. Not the fatigue everyone already talked about. Something else. Something oddly familiar. He frowned for only a moment before returning to work. Hours later, he couldn't stop thinking about it. That afternoon, during lunch in the basement break room, Marcus pulled an old photograph from his wallet. It showed his late wife sitting outside a rehabilitation center nearly 10 years earlier. She had suffered temporary nerve complications after chemotherapy. Not the same illness, but the same tiny habit. Marcus stared at the picture. Danielle's left thumb rested against the side of her index finger. Exactly like Eleanor's. He remembered asking one of Danielle's therapists about it. "It's called protective positioning," she'd explained. "The body sometimes guards against pain you can't actually see." Marcus wasn't a doctor, but he remembered every conversation from those difficult months because loving someone meant paying attention. That evening, as he emptied trash bins outside Eleanor's office, he noticed her working long after everyone else had gone home. She rubbed her temples, closed one eye, then quietly whispered, "Not today." There was no audience, no performance, just exhaustion. Marcus gently knocked on the open door. "I'm sorry to interrupt." She looked up. "Oh, Marcus, I noticed you've skipped dinner again." She blinked. "Excuse me. The cafeteria manager throws away your meal almost every evening." A tired smile appeared. "I guess I've been busy. My wife used to say busy people forget they're human." For the first time all day, Eleanor laughed. A genuine laugh. "I liked your wife already." "I did too." Silence settled comfortably between them. Marcus hesitated. "I hope this isn't out of line." She leaned back. "Go ahead. I noticed something about your hand." Instantly her smile faded. "You and everyone else." "No, ma'am." He gently shook his head. "Not the shaking." She studied him carefully. "What then?" "You protect your thumb." Her expression froze. Marcus continued carefully. "My wife did that after chemotherapy damaged a nerve in her shoulder. She wasn't protecting her hand. She was protecting pain that started somewhere else." Eleanor stared without speaking. Finally she asked quietly, "Where?" "The base of the neck." Her breathing changed. "Barely." But Marcus noticed. "So many specialists watch me walk," she whispered. "They watched your symptoms." "My wife always told me symptoms sometimes lie." Eleanor looked toward the city skyline. "You know, not one doctor has ever asked me whether the pain begins before the tremor." Marcus remained silent. She slowly touched the side of her neck, almost unconsciously, exactly where Danielle once had. The next morning, Eleanor canceled 3 investor meetings. By afternoon, she was sitting across from Dr. Allison Grant, a rehabilitation neurologist she'd never previously visited, not because she was more famous than the others, but because her practice specialized in movement patterns instead of expensive experimental therapies. Dr. Grant spent nearly 2 hours simply watching Eleanor move. Stand, reach, turn, breathe. She asked questions no one else had asked. When does the tightness begin? What position feels safest? What makes you instinctively brace yourself? Marcus never expected to hear another word about it. He certainly never imagined that 3 days later, security would approach him during his shift. "Ms. Hartwell would like to see you." His stomach tightened. Had he crossed a line? Was he about to lose the only stable job his son depended on? He wiped his hands, straightened his uniform, and stepped into the executive office, wondering whether one simple observation had just changed his life forever. Marcus paused outside the office door, took one steady breath, and stepped inside. Eleanor was standing beside the window instead of sitting behind her desk. She still looked tired, but there was something different in her face. It wasn't that she looked healthier. It was that she looked hopeful. "You're not in trouble," she said before he could speak. "Actually, I owe you an apology." Marcus looked confused. "For what?" "For spending years believing the only people who could help me had impressive titles." She motioned for him to sit. Dr. Grant found something none of the other specialists had ever investigated. Marcus remained quiet. "The tremor wasn't the disease," Eleanor continued. "It was my body's response to severe compression in the upper cervical area combined with years of muscle guarding." Every treatment focused on calming my nervous system, but nobody asked why my body was constantly protecting itself. She smiled gently. Except you. Marcus lowered his eyes. I only remembered what happened to my wife. Exactly, Eleanor replied. You paid attention. Dr. Grant had ordered a completely different series of scans while a physical therapist carefully evaluated Eleanor's movement rather than simply measuring strength. The results revealed an old injury from a car accident nearly 20 years earlier. It had healed incorrectly, creating years of abnormal muscle tension that slowly affected surrounding nerves. It wasn't a miracle diagnosis. It wasn't simple either. Surgery alone wouldn't fix it. Neither would medication. It would require months of specialized rehabilitation, careful therapy, pain management, and rebuilding movement patterns her body had forgotten. But for the first time in nearly 15 years, the doctors believed improvement was realistic instead of merely possible. Eleanor looked at Marcus. You've already given me something $100 million couldn't buy. What's that? The right question. News traveled quietly through the executive floor. Employees noticed Eleanor leaving the office twice a week for therapy appointments. They noticed her walking a little farther each month without stopping. They noticed fewer missed meetings and more genuine smiles. She never announced her progress publicly. She simply kept doing the work. Marcus returned to cleaning offices every morning as though nothing had happened. He never told coworkers what he had noticed. He didn't speak to reporters when rumors spread that the CEO had found a breakthrough. He considered it private. One evening, nearly 4 months later, Caleb waited for his father outside the building after basketball practice. Dad. The boy called. Marcus smiled as his son ran toward him carrying a worn backpack. Before they reached the parking lot, another voice interrupted. Marcus. Eleanor walked across the lobby without an assistant beside her. Her stride was still cautious but noticeably stronger. Caleb looked up politely. Hello, ma'am, Eleanor smiled. You must be Caleb. Your father talks about you every chance he gets. Caleb grinned. He embarrasses me a lot. That's part of the job, Marcus laughed. Eleanor handed Marcus a sealed envelope. Please open it at home. You didn't have to. Yes, she interrupted gently. I did. That night, sitting at the small kitchen table where Marcus and Caleb usually ate spaghetti on Fridays, Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was not a check. It was a handwritten letter. Marcus read it slowly. Dear Marcus, people assume leadership is about having the right answers. I've learned it's about listening long enough to hear the questions everyone else ignores. You reminded me that wisdom isn't measured by degrees, salaries, or office doors. It's measured by attention, compassion, and the courage to speak kindly when silence would be easier. Thank you for seeing me as a person instead of a patient or a CEO. Caleb looked up. There's more. Marcus unfolded another page. It contained information about a scholarship fund. Hartwell Biotech would fully cover Caleb's education through college if he chose to attend. Marcus immediately shook his head. I can't accept this. The following morning, he walked into Eleanor's office carrying the envelope. This is too much, Eleanor smiled. Is it? I wasn't trying to earn anything. I know, she folded her hands. That's exactly why you deserve it, Marcus hesitated. There has to be another way, Eleanor nodded. There is, she opened another folder. We've started a new employee program. Every person in this company, from custodians to executives, will receive annual training encouraging them to report observations, safety concerns, or ideas without worrying about job titles. We are also creating a scholarship for employees' children. Caleb's will simply be the first. Marcus stared silently. This isn't charity, Eleanor continued. It's an investment in people we've overlooked for far too long. Months turned into a year. Hartwell Biotech became known for something unexpected. Employee turnover dropped dramatically. Small operational problems were identified before becoming expensive disasters because everyone felt comfortable speaking up. Departments that had barely communicated before began solving problems together. Eleanor often reminded new managers, the best idea in the building may come from someone whose office doesn't even have a desk. Her own recovery continued steadily. Some days remained painful. Some therapy sessions left her exhausted. Progress wasn't measured in dramatic moments but in ordinary victories. walking an extra block, climbing a staircase without stopping, holding a coffee cup without her hand tightening, living instead of merely enduring. One crisp autumn afternoon, the company gathered outside its headquarters for the opening of a community wellness center funded by the Hartwell Foundation. Reporters surrounded Eleanor, asking the question they had repeated for months. "Who saved your life?" She looked across the crowd until she found Marcus standing quietly near the back with Caleb. "No one saved my life," she answered. "A janitor reminded me that healing begins when someone cares enough to truly notice another human being." Cameras turned toward Marcus, who looked as uncomfortable as ever. Eleanor continued, "Titles can open doors, but character opens hearts. One changes companies, the other changes lives." Marcus glanced at Caleb, who smiled with unmistakable pride. "Guess Grandma was right," Caleb whispered. "About what?" Marcus asked. "The little things," Marcus smiled. "Yeah." Caleb looked at the busy crowd helping elderly neighbors into the new wellness center. Employees volunteering side by side regardless of position, and Eleanor greeting every visitor by name whenever she could. The little things really do become the big things. Marcus slipped his arm around his son's shoulder as they walked toward the entrance together. Neither of them had become wealthy overnight. There had been no miracle, no unbelievable stroke of luck, and no perfect ending. There had only been ordinary people choosing to pay attention, to work hard, to trust one another, and to act with kindness when it mattered most. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough doesn't come from the smartest person in the room. Sometimes it comes from the one who quietly notices what everyone else has stopped seeing. And in the end, that simple act of paying attention proved more valuable than $100 million ever could.